Hello, my name is Julia O'Shea, and I am the respiratory therapist who works at the University of Vermont Medical Center in Pulmonary Rehab. So I have with me today Carolyn, who is a past graduate of our pulmonary rehab program. It was 3 years ago that we worked together in pulmonary rehab. And we are just having a discussion. I'm going to ask her some questions, kind of overviewing what it's like living with lung disease, benefits of pulmonary rehab, and then advice and support that she can offer to other people living with lung disease. And I will just say one of the reasons why I asked Carolyn, and one of the things I love so much about her, is that she's very determined and she's motivated to not only take care of herself and her lungs, but to learn as much as she can about how to do those things. So thank you very much for being with me today, Carolyn. And all right, so I'm just going to jump right in. So you've dealt with many different types of pulmonary diagnoses. So it's interesting because I feel like you kind of cover all the bases when it comes to types of pulmonary disease. But can you just kind of give me a little overview or tell me what your experience is like living with lung disease?
Well, let's start out with the various types that and living with it. Initially, in 2016, I went on the quest to find out what was wrong, what was causing my shortness of breath. And I finally wound up, after some experiences with Dartmouth, at Fletcher Allen and Dr. Hopkins, who's the cardiologist there. And Dr. Hopkins made some preliminary diagnoses, which I think caught his attention. And he referred me over to pulmonology, who got me in fairly quickly. And the results of the testing that they did indicated that I had emphysema, pulmonary fibrosis, pulmonary hypertension, stiff right heart, and then as a comorbidity factor, I love that term, sleep apnea. As it turns out, there's another COPD disease that they didn't mention that has kind of come to the fore recently, but doesn't do anything, so I ignored. Anyway, that's what I started the game with. And then after the diagnoses, which came as a shock, I expected one or two, but not to win the trifecta. I got in line for pulmonary rehab, and I went to the head of the line fairly quickly, which was nice. I told all the people at work about this because I knew that I'd have to go on oxygen. Of course, I told my kids, and they could figure out in a hurry that these diseases are not good. And if you have one, that's bad, but what happens if you have multiple ones, and so forth. So at any rate, it appeared to me that I would be dead in probably about 4 or 5 years. And that was in 2016. So I went to pulmonary rehab, and while I was there, then they put me on oxygen 24/7, which was good. I had known for a year that I needed to be on daytime oxygen, but I didn't pass the test to get oxygen. You have to do the 6-minute walk and have your oxygen level at 88. And for some reason, I just come clipping along at 94 or whatever, and I just couldn't make the grade. So finally, I got on oxygen, and I had been on it at night because in the sleep apnea test, it showed up that my oxygen level stopped. But now I was on it 24/7. So the next trick was, I'm still working full time. The next trick was to figure out how to live with this changed environment. And I didn't particularly want to change my lifestyle. So it meant horsing around with all of the different ways of maintaining mobility and having oxygen at the same time. So I went through multiple concentrators. I probably went through 3 or 4 different kinds of concentrators and found that there were problems in that either the battery didn't last long enough, or there were a number of issues with each one that I came up with. And finally, I wound up with an Inogen, which I dearly love. I mean, yes, you could say it's got this problem or that problem, But the bottom line is that what that did was enable me to go out all day, all night. And because of the way that I would carry it, it meant that I can go into a restaurant and not be overly obtrusive. I can go to the theater and it doesn't make too much noise that it disturbs people. So my girlfriend and I tend to go out on Saturdays and go to a movie and go out to dinner. And usually there's driving involved. So I'm out for, a full day. I mean from like 10 in the morning until maybe even 10 at night. And so what I can do is when I'm in the car, I plug in and charge. Then we go into the restaurant or whatever and we eat. Then we come back in and, we go to the next place and I charge. And then we go in and come back out and then I charge coming home. So that's generally enough. Not always. So I carry a spare battery with me. And if I have to change midstream somewhere, I simply change batteries. So this was a big, big plus, big game changer in life. This meant that I go everywhere. My lifestyle has not changed. I can't think of anything I've stopped doing, unless it's something I don't like to do, and then in which case then I just don't do it. And I have a reason to not do it. But otherwise, it's enabled me to do everything I want to do. So I can't say that there has been a life change. The big change, and we may address this later, is that by using my oxygen continuously and by leading a normal life with full mobility, I think what that's done, along with a lot of other things, is extended my life. Because right now, I have more energy than I had when we started this game. That when we started, I'd have to rest when I was cooking dinner. Different places like that, it would show up. Going upstairs was really, could be problematic. Now I don't even think about going downstairs. Like I say, I have much more energy than I did at the start. So that's my pitch for using the oxygen, is that I think it's made a huge change.
Mm-hmm. So something that, and I've seen how you adapt very well, but a lot of people don't. And so when they're told they need oxygen, whether it's continuous or with exertion, they find ways to not use their oxygen. For example, you mentioned the stairs. So a lot of times I have pulmonary rehab students who say, well, I was just going up the stairs, so I decided not to use my oxygen. And then, of course, they get to the top and they're very short of breath and they have to recover. Can you just kind of tell me how you've been able to adapt to use the oxygen more? Or I know you mentioned
I just leave it on. In the house, I've got 50 feet of hose. It's a small condo, but I've got 3 flights of stairs. So it's 1.5, 2 flights to come into the condo. And then once you're in the condo, there's another flight to go up to the bedrooms. So that there's a fair amount there, but I always have the oxygen on. And what I found is that I tinker with it. And now I found that I used to use it, they initially say the home should be at 2 and the concentrator should be at, I don't know, they never give you an exact thing because we're going between continuous and pulse. But what I found was on the pulse concentrator, I have now set it up higher than I might have normally. Normally I would have started out maybe 3, 4, and then if I got short of breath, then I go up to 5. What I found was that if I leave it at 5, period, I don't ever get short of breath. So apparently, I maintain a continuously high level of oxygen in my system. If I check with an oximeter, I'm probably running 95, 96, maybe a little higher. So that's how I avoid that out of breath thing, is by leaving it on. And the thing that is, when I think about it intellectually, is that below 88%, you're starting to damage your organs. And so I always make sure it's, I screw around. I mean, let's face it, I'm human. I don't like this thing blowing up my nose. And I'll take it off, but I keep oximeters everywhere. And so if I take it off, I'll check it about every 5 minutes, maybe more, to make sure that it doesn't go below 88%. And if it starts to go down, then I put the oxygen back on. So that's how I manage the out of breath piece of it. That I very rarely complain about out of breath anymore. Initially, when I was using the lower settings, I had some issues there.
Okay. And I know from the very beginning when you did your research and you got your portable oxygen concentrator, I remember you with the backpack and you were saying how you could still go dancing and do things. So making it work for you and be portable. And I know people who say, well, it's too heavy. So this segues into exercise and strengthening and stuff. So obviously you use a pretty big machine. I've seen your machine and it's certainly not light. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, the good news is the next generation of the bigger machines has gotten smaller. That's been a plus, because the newer one I've got, leaves you a whole room for the backpack, which means that I don't carry a purse anymore. And carrying a purse has its disadvantages because you're twisting your body, if you use a shoulder bag. But yeah, let's go back to pulmonary rehab, because you had emphasized that you wanted to know the advantages of pulmonary rehab, to me at least, which is that it sensitized me to the fact that you're dealing with a whole body, that everything works basically synergistically. So you have diet, you have exercise, you have the oxygen, you have all these sorts of things. So one of the things that I put an emphasis on is maintaining the exercise piece of it. And the way I do that is through Bone Builders, which is a class that's offered through the senior centers and relatively free. I mean, it's like, it should be free, but some centers charge you a fee of $25 for 2 classes a week for, 16 weeks or something. So it's not a pricey thing. And now it's available on Zoom. So I'm very faithful about doing the Bone Builders, which replicates the exercises from pulmonary rehab. I did have a trainer until it got too risky going to the gym, and he'll be back, but working more with weights. And finally, doing the treadmill. And I'm not real keen on exercise, trust me. This is not a biggie with me. I hate it. I'd rather read a book. And I do yoga, different kinds of yoga. Again, that's available online, various ways. But the whole point is to have the strength to be able to carry the backpack, but also you've got all those muscles and so forth around your chest and so forth that you want to open up and work with. And my goal, and I seem to be achieving it, was to not die immediately. And the other thing was to be able to maintain my lifestyle. And so those are the things that motivate me to do this. So that's how I handle the weight of the backpack, is that it's better than any alternative, and allows me to get out and do what I want to do.
Mm-hmm. And I know you're someone that is fond of the group exercises. Like, you've definitely been taking advantage of the Zoom or the virtual component, which also I feel like is a good accountability piece, because then you're checking in, you're seeing other people who are also exercising online. Is there any recommendations you make for help with motivation around exercising?
Well, that's the joy of I found with exercise, there's got to be a carrot. That there's got to be, to diverge a little bit. I was in the carnival business for a long time, and the carrot was, if you want to go to the bathroom, you have to walk. And if you want food, you're going to have to walk to get it. So if you can hang out food, maybe I'll move, this kind of thing. Well, the same thing is true with this kind of exercise, and the carrot is that, particularly when it's in-person classes, is that you go to be with people. The people are more important than the exercise, ultimately. You do the exercise, but you do that as a means to see the people. So basically what I tell everybody is that you've got to make sure it fits into your lifestyle. And you got to make sure that there's some impetus for doing it other than, oh yeah, you're going to feel great once you've done it. Like that, I haven't seen that work with anybody. Well, some people, I mean, dedicated exercises, yes, but I mean, like my roommate, she feels great after she goes for a walk, and then she doesn't go for a walk for another week. So, so I find, but if she'd go over and buy the donuts, now that would cause her to move. I got to tell her that next Sunday.
Instead of the carrot, it's a donut.
Yeah.
Right. So I think we've covered the pulmonary rehab piece, and I always appreciate your perspective on oxygen and your dedication to understanding the importance of oxygen. But is there anything else that you would like to share with people?
Yeah, I'd like to go a little further into the oxygen piece, which is that in earlier presentations, I would talk a little bit more about the effects. And the effects of using the oxygen are much more dramatic than just being able to maintain a lifestyle. That apparently, as far as I can tell with my body, it had been deprived for maybe a decade. So what I found when I went on oxygen was that there were observable physiological changes. And they started out with an improved mental acuity. And how do I judge that? Well, I've worked for the same employer for 7 years doing the same kind of work. And once I went on oxygen, I'd look back at previous work and say, like, why didn't you question that? Why didn't you look at that? So I found that there was, not a huge increase, but just a sharpening of my mental abilities. The next one, working my way down, would be my teeth and gums. My gums were in good shape before. There was no real issue. But once I went on oxygen, they really firmed up so that enough to be worthy of comment. I'd used the same dental hygienist for 20 years. And she noted that that they were amazing. This is important when you're old because if you want to do crowns or implants or anything else, the health of your gums is important. So at any rate, so my dentist just loves my gums if he has to do any work there. So that was a major improvement. I've noticed that the lower legs had discoloration from a number of prescription drugs that I took in Africa. And those have cleared up, that the circulation in the lower legs has gotten better, that scars have filled in, that the skin tissue texture itself has changed. I've had the same body work people for years, and the actual texture of the skin has improved. And so you work your way down all of these observable changes, and then you have to wonder what's happening inside. That things have to have changed. Well, they did. That I sent Julia my recent PFT test scores and so forth, because I kept telling my pulmonologist, I'm getting better. And she's like, oh yeah. Well, this time they graphed them, and you can see how it went. And so you can see that I hit a bottom at one point, like this last May, which is I had a kind of come to Jesus meeting with my kids and said, okay, here's what the will looks like. Here's how this is going to play out. And then after that, it started to go up. And so you can see the things. The one that I was worried about was diffusion. Well, it's improved. Pulmonary hypertension has gone away. We don't test for that anymore. We don't talk about pulmonary fibrosis. We talk about maybe a little bit of the emphysema types of stuff, but we don't talk about pulmonary fibrosis anymore. So that seems to me to be what's happening inside, is that these diseases that were fatal and incurable and you could only get palliative care for seem to be responsive if attended to. So basically at this point, I've planned on living another at least 12 years, which meant that, of course, I had to change all my finances and the rest of that stuff. And then I was going to go out and blow it. Hey, I'm dying, man. I'm going to buy that. It's like, no, you better be a little bit more conscientious about this, because you're going to be around to the point where I've said to my kids who don't take care of their health, they're in their 50s and moving to 60s, is that I'm afraid that they're going to predecease me. So the bottom takeaway from this is that don't buy the story. You can lead a normal life, and you can lead one of normal lifespan. I mean, I've exceeded it. We didn't mention this at the beginning, but I'm 78 now. So my family all died by the time they were 75. So, anything for me is a bonus. But use your oxygen. Use it 24/7. Go everywhere with it. Nobody will comment on it. And you'll stand out in the crowd. You'll be the only one. Which, big advantage there. If you're going to meet somebody you don't know, what you do is you tell them, you're the lady with gray hair on oxygen. And then they can find you. The other one was that I went to Rockefeller Center to see the Rockettes. And I told them in advance that I was disabled. So they were expecting me. We go there and there's this huge crowd. I mean, we're talking hundreds of people. It's a big theater. And all of a sudden the crowd parts. This woman comes out and she takes my hand because she knows I'm the one on oxygen. And she leads me into my seat. So you can run it for all it's worth too.
Nice. Well, I think we're gonna wrap it up. And I certainly appreciate your insight and motivation to learn as much as you can, because education is key. It's just as important, right, as the exercise, as wearing the oxygen, because if you understand the benefits and what's happening in your body, then you're more likely to do those things because you know that they work.
Now let me throw one more thing.
Yeah.
I just took up my flute lessons.
Oh, nice.
It works better than it did the first time. I'm serious, because first time I had trouble with the breathing. And now with the oxygen, it works. It's working a lot better tone.
Yeah. So figuring out what works for you, right? Everyone's different.
Yep.
Maybe someone plays the harmonica.
Yeah.
And then using your resources. So if you're someone who is in the Vermont area and you're interested in pulmonary rehab, reach out, find the provider to refer you. I do think, Carolyn, I think you got your provider to refer you. I don't think it was initiated by them. But be your own advocate, right? That's the other.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, you're in charge of this thing.
Yeah. So educate.
And you have to live with the results. You have to live with the results of this. So.
Yeah. So find your resources. There's a lot online. Obviously, if you're watching this video, then you probably have online resources. And reach out to people, ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It's also important. All right. Anything else, Carolyn?
No, except use your oxygen. Use your oxygen.
Use your oxygen if you need it. Yeah. Exercise, build those, recondition those muscles to work better. And I love how you mentioned, the breathing, the mechanics of breathing is so important. Okay, well, thank you so much. And we will be in touch again, maybe at the next pulmonary rehab support group. Okay, bye. I'm just gonna